is something that I just notice a lot. And that is when you're feeling lonely in an interaction with a person. That could be, a close relationship, a sort of mid-level relationship, or however. I mean, it could even happen, at the rental car place, which is where I just came from. But when we feel lonely, when we're with somebody, and it's almost an oxymoron, right? Because the cure for loneliness is relationship, period. And it should help, but sometimes it doesn't. And one of the great paradoxes, one of the loneliest places that you can be in life is in a disconnected relationship. I mean, talk to some people in their most significant relationships, marriage or dating or, close circle of family or friends or whatever, and they feel lonely in that relationship. Well, why is that? Well, there's a lot of ways to look at this and a lot of things to do really about it, and that's a whole long list. I mean, I've written books on this, right? But one of the little helpful paradigms that I learned a long time ago, and it actually came from there was a rabbi named Martin Buber who I think came up with this little paradigm. And he wrote a very famous book called I, Thou. I, Thou, meaning me and you. But the thou has significant meaning because thou, the way he used it, is different than it. See, a thou is a person and an it is an object, just an inanimate object. Could be, could be this pen here. And yet sometimes very animate objects like relationships, we talk about our love objects, they can be inanimate in terms of getting to your heart. So what he talked about, and this is a good way to think about this, is a relationship is what we call a dyad. That means two people in it. And in that relationship, it can take one of three forms. If you are fully present, fully, whatever that means, if you're emotionally available and tuned in, the technical term is you have attunement to somebody, you have empathy, you're listening, you know what that feels like. And the other person is doing the same with you, you're attuned to each other, then that's what he called an I-thou relationship. Sometimes people are not being a thou in terms of they're not showing up with emotional presence and attunement to you. And he termed that as an I it. This person's not really showing up with thou-ness, they're showing up with itness. They're just, you might as well be talking to a rock, right? So I it is another kind of relationship that you can have. And a third one is it. It's when we're not being real, nor is the other person, or vulnerable, or connecting. Now, the loneliness part comes in pretty much in the I it relationship, or if somebody is making an it out of you, if you are just an object to them, where you're not really a thou. Now, this can vacillate even in our best relationships. There are moments in every marriage where, one person's not connecting and they're kind of scurrying around, could be in to-do mode or whatever. And the other person feels like kind of an object of their to-do list or an object of a rant or reactions or something. And then that relationship can morph into a more of an I thou. But I want you to think about it in terms of moment by moment. Now, if you find yourself in an interaction, and let me give you a really good clue for this. One of them is when you're having a conversation and it feels like a ping pong game match, where you say something and then they just come back. It's like you hit them a serve, and that's like a invitation or a cue for them just to talk about something about themselves or unrelated. Sort of like, so what'd you do over the holidays? Oh, it's great. We went on this trip with the family. Yeah, we went on a trip with our family too. Okay. I thought we were talking about me. Or sometimes we do that to others. I want you to just notice in conversations how many times somebody says something and the other person responds to that in some way about the person and what they said. They keep it about them. It doesn't have to last forever, but um, yeah, how's your New Year's? Well, we went on a trip with the family. Oh, well, how was it? Where'd you go? What were your experiences? That's a thou. See, they didn't just serve the tennis ball back with, well, here's a ball about me. Here's something about me. And I used you as a cue to get on stage. No, they stayed in the same interaction where you were in. Now, that doesn't have to be about you. It can even be about the flow of the conversation. I was reading this article about neuroscience and the way that neuroplasticity works. And maybe the other person says, yeah, neuroplasticity, that's what were you reading? Well, found this topic to be true. And yeah, doesn't it require certain kind of conditions? See, you feel like you're being listened to. And you feel like you're listening to them. That's an I vow. And what an I vow does is it rewires, fuels, corrects, empowers, models, informs, structures our entire being. See, everything we are from our heart, mind, and soul is formed and developed and maintained and repaired or destroyed in relationships. So, every relationship can't be the perfect I thou, and any relationship is not going to be the perfect I thou. But I just want you to use this, even say you're even with a spouse or one of your kids, use it as a little barometer of the moment. You know, in fact, I did this. I did this. I was, with a group of friends, and we were just talking about stuff, and it's going back and forth. And in the moment, I felt like, we don't see each other very often, and who cares about whatever we're talking about? How are you guys doing? And you can use it as a kind of like looking at the thermostat. Are we connecting here or not? Now, don't go drive everybody crazy. Oh, you got to be deep all the time. No, I don't want you to do that. This is just a little bit of a tool to tell you how connecting are we being, and loneliness is a good indicator of that. It can be in the moment, it can be over time, all of that. One of the things I really like to do when I'm interviewing people, this could either be clinically or maybe potentially somebody I'm going to work with or somebody I'm going to hire or whatever. I'm looking for how capable are they of an interaction, because if they're in their own orbit, then problems are going to ensue at some point. I wrote a book this year, if you want to go deep on this, called Trust. And one of the things I did in that book was I gave a map of how trust is developed and broken and repaired. And it talks about 5 things. And the first one is when you feel understood. And this is a big, big basis for that. We feel like somebody's with us, they're attuned to us, they're getting, you walk away that feeling, he really gets me or she really gets me. And that's when you walk away, and you feel gotten, and your heart feels gotten, and your brain feels gotten. That's different than when you walk away not feeling that way. Well, understanding builds that kind of trust. And the second one is that you feel like they are for you. See, in an I thou relationship, we feel a forness. Somebody's not just for themselves in this interaction. I'm just an it being used for this hour by somebody, your heart, your mind, your soul, or even your body. You're not just an object, you're a thou. Speaking of the body thing, you look at all the, sexual therapy, sex therapy world, and sexual dysfunction in relationships. And a big part of the dysfunction, kind of a big column in there that you'll hear, is when somebody feels like they, during sex, that they're an object to the other person and not a connected thou. And then that gets into performance anxiety, it gets into control, it gets into a lot of dynamics. It causes people's bodies to shut down. You can have all sorts of sexual performance issues if somebody feels like an object. Also, on the other side of this, you see this a lot with people that have, a history of deep porn addiction and then can't function sexually in a real relationship. It's because in a porn addiction, there is no thou. There's an object of one's fantasies or desires, but that's not a person. That's not a person that goes, oh, that didn't feel good. Or, you know, what time is it? Or whatever. With a addiction like that, it's all fantasy. You are creating the other person. They are an object. It's not a person. And somebody's brain gets kind of down that path, and that's what they do. And then, they get with a real human being, and that's a whole new ballgame. So it can lead to anxiety and a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, that's what an I thou relationship, one way to think about it, but it's helpful.